Hello, this is Liz Bitgood. Welcome to Manager Memo, a bi-weekly podcast that beams from the beautiful hills of Dudley, Massachusetts. Manager Memo is a business forum where the fundamentals of planning, organizing, leading, and evaluating are discussed and debated. Your host for our show is Len Zamborowski, Management Chair at Nichols College. And now, on with the show.
Welcome, podcast listeners, to Manager Memo, where we talk to practitioners in the field of management. And today, our distinct pleasure is to have Principal Tenreiro from Cumberland High School. Thank you so much for coming today and talking to us. I appreciate the invite to come to your school. So we like to tell our listeners about management, and specifically in your job as an educator. How long have you been doing it, and how do you view your management role?
I was an assistant principal for 8 years prior to being principal here. It's my 5th year now as the principal of Cumberland High School. I view my role more as an instructional leader, sometimes more than just as a manager, but when you think of management, I think that it's highly relational. This job is highly relational.
And how many students do you have? How many principals do you have how many administrators do you have at this school?
So we have 2 assistant principals for teaching and learning. We have 2 deans of discipline. I have about 122 faculty.
122.
But then with the rest of the staff, you include cafeteria, custodial, other folks like that, you're upwards of 200 people.
Okay.
And then 1,400 kids.
1,400 kids and 200 staff.
And for a high school, we're a little bit different in the sense that we have 3 separate buildings. So at any given time, we also have kids walking outside to get to different buildings. And so it's a large campus, college-style campus.
Right, big campus for sure. A lot of big facilities.
Yeah.
What's your budget?
The overall budget for I actually have to think just from the district perspective too. A lot of times my budget that I'm responsible for is just over $1 million, but just things like supplies, equipment, stuff like that. Once you start to include faculty, I actually have to look at it.
Right. But $1 million for operating,
basic supplies, equipment for the art department, things like that. It's somewhere around $1 million. And there's about a $250,000 student activity fund that I'm responsible for too and managing that.
So $1 million budget, 1,600 people, a lot of moving parts.
Sure.
What's the biggest challenge?
One of the big things I think is consistency of expectations, and we do a lot of work around that. Whether it's just clear expectations in certain handbooks and guidebooks and things like that for faculty and for students. I mean, having pretty clear and high expectations for people is very important, because you got to give people a target of what you expect, so that you have something to strive for.
Sure.
And I always felt that the higher that target, the people will come up to meet that. The lower that target, they'll go to meet that too.
Right.
And so, high expectations, I think, has had a pretty amazing impact at the school. I'll give you an example just from students, by the way. We allow students to open enroll in any class that they have an interest in. And we talk to them based on their PSAT scores about their potential in advanced courses. And so in 4 years, our growth in advanced placement courses has been about 85%. I mean, it's a big number.
Your counselors do that with them, or teachers?
I actually do this AP potential breakfast, and we invite the counselors and we invite other folks like that that are involved in that kind of decision making. But we do that in the cafeteria, and for some kids, it's the first time maybe that they've been told that they, in fact, no matter what your grades might be, you in fact have the skills and the potential to be successful in this course, and they are being successful in the course. And for me, that's important because it's pretty clear out there when you look at research that a kid that can get through a rigorous program and course will have a great level of persistence once they get to college. And we want them finishing. The last number that we looked at for our graduates, 90% of them are returning to college for the second year of college.
Right.
So that's a pretty high number. Pretty high number.
You use that word persistence or perseverance. How do you manage that or instill it in the students?
So it's interesting. We have these 5 learner qualities that we try to grow in kids, but that we also assess when we're looking at students. And things like attitude and mindset, quality producer, self-directed learner, and respectful citizen. So those are some of them. And we rate those on a quarterly basis on kids on their report cards, but it also transitions over to their transcript.
So the metric is a report card, and that's how you measure it.
That's how we measure it, but we can't just measure it or assess it either. And we can't have an attitude that, well, this kid just doesn't have the persistence, and so we're just going to give them that score. Like they may be in a home or a place where these values weren't important. And to be honest with you, there are plenty of at-risk kids that I think have had lives and are more resilient and have this real strength in them, but they just need to know how to channel that in different ways into their work. But I bet they're more resilient than me in most cases.
Sure.
But the interesting thing about the transcript is we sort of average it out. How many of you met? How many of you not met? And we call it our post-secondary workforce readiness score, or learner quality index. And so businesses in the community and college admissions officers now have this other measure. So you can look at some course grades, you can look at our standards, but they can also look at these learner quality scores for kids. And so, the kid's always got an A+, but might not be that respectful. Right. It sort of shows that. It also shows the kid who struggles a bit, but is working so hard. And like a local business owner told me, I can teach the kid how to use the register, the cash register. I can't necessarily teach him to be dressed appropriately, show up on time, and be nice to people. Right. And so the question for our teachers is, how do we grow these things in people? The opposite, not the opposite, but the interesting part of learner qualities is we also had our teachers self-assess against those same learner qualities we expect with kids.
The teachers did.
The teachers did this, and the place where our teachers identified themselves as being the greatest area for improvement was as a self-directed learner. Mm-hmm. And so there's an interesting issue there that we're expecting our students to be more self-directed. We're expecting our learning environments to be more self-directed,
right.
And yet our teachers struggle with self-direction. Sure. And so there's a point of professional development, a point of professional growth that we can leverage, that then benefits students at the same time.
And to me, that just seems like the fascinating challenge of your job, to balance the growth of the student and to take care of the professional development of your professional educators, your teachers.
Yeah, I think the common piece, when I was talking about high expectations before, the higher the expectations, whether it's for adults or whether it's for students, the balance of that is at those high levels of support and high levels of capacity building that we're trying to do. Right. And, I'm a big reader of folks like Michael Fullen and other folks that write about the change process. And Michael Fullen talks about the correct and the correct and incorrect drivers of reform. And one of the arguments is that you need this balance between accountability and expectation and capacity building, or sometimes people term it as a balance between pressure and support.
Okay.
And you need those.
Interesting way to look at it, pressure and support.
Yeah, because if you have one and not the other, it's not going to work. And I've seen that in different situations. You try and give an example from the past where schools have tried to develop these advisory programs to pure just PD and the growth of teachers and how to be an advisor. But if you don't have really clear expectations about what we want there, and then you're not inspecting some of that, it's hard to get that from everybody in terms of consistent expectations. You're effective teachers, you're highly effective teachers. I mean, these people work so well autonomously, they're so valued, sure. They're gonna get it done. We could go in so many different directions, but one of the interesting things that I always try and do is I always, these three questions, what's the purpose of something? Is it meaningful? And what do my best people think about it? And, take something as simple as greeting kids at the door. We expect that. We have this document called "This is how we do it." This is what good teaching is at Cumberland High School. We expect kids to greet kids at the door. I mean, it's important.
If you were sending out a memorandum to your team to encourage that sort of behavior, what would that memorandum say?
The behavior, especially around greeting kids at the door, or just in general?
In general. I mean, if you were either to your students or to the faculty.
I would tell you, I'll get to that specific answer there, but I would tell you one of the things we do each year is we have the school-wide theme. This year, for instance, it's we have this essential question: does what we value become our legacy?
Yeah. Nice.
Last year, it centered around what does it mean to pay it forward, and we try and align a lot to that. And so a lot of times my annual messages, and then and I follow it up from that beginning of the year letter in the summer, throughout messages throughout the year, and then it's usually the theme of my graduation speech. So this concept of the legacy that we leave behind, and how so a lot of my communications really go in that the
focused on your message
and the ways we see that and the way it's being lived out, and promoting things like that. The kids a few years ago, they raised $25,000 for the Working Home Society with that pay it forward message. We had kids doing and teachers doing special things for each other without leaving flowers on cars and buying somebody's lunch and stuff like that.
From the simple to the
complex. It just was cultivated, I think, as part of that message. And
looking at your bio and reading your bio, and then knowing a little bit about you from some students that I have at college, understand that you were responsible for a large transformation, an important transformation here at the high school. Would you care to tell us how that came about?
So I've been traveling the country as the principal leader, and I tell you that any good principal is going to deflect that question, and because we're talking.
It's not about you, right?
Well, right. It's about the team and the students and the faculty, but we've also been talking to principals when we're out there about the fact that we need to elevate principalship, and that principal leadership absolutely matters, and we got to stop being humble, because I do believe that type of cultural transformation, the type of cultivation of innovative things like a standards-based grading and reporting system, if our leadership team leaves, some of those things could be in trouble. But a good leader will have a good school, but if you have a great school, I think you need a great leader. And the difficulty in my profession right now, when you talk about management, is the issue of turnover. I mean, nationally, there's only 27% of principals that are in the job to see the freshman class get capable of graduating. So, and
significant turnover.
Yeah, and that sustainable change takes 5 to 7 years. So if you have people falling out even before the 5th year, where does that leave us? And then superintendent turnover is even worse. So I'm trying to get out there and talk to people about, is it possible to stay in the job for 7 to 10 years, if possible. I know that's hard. The balance of family in this job is.
I was going to ask that. The turnover is because the burnout.
I don't know if there's been enough even study done on that. I would tell you that there's certainly burnout. Anecdotally, when I'm out there, the balance between home and family. Sometimes it's a vacuum of leadership that just, there's not enough of a pool and jobs that are above the principalship and the assistant and superintendents. And, obviously, there's more pay that might bring some people to a job like that. For me right now, I'm pretty satisfied being a principal, I can still bring my own children to a homecoming football game, but I can't necessarily bring them to an executive session of the school committee, right?
Sure.
And I enjoy the job of being with the kids, and I don't want to separate too far. And I have some experience because I was on a public urban school committee for 8 years, and so I sort of know what that life is like too, from a political experience. So.
Well, Principal Tenreiro, thank you so much for having this talk with me today, and we appreciate you coming on Manager Memo.
And for all you loyal listeners out there, come back soon for more management ideas from top leaders in the field of business through the prism of what we call the Manager Memo.
Baseball teams make money, Keep your funny side up, let your laughter come through, stand up on your legs, be like 2 fried eggs, keep your sunny side up.